The Turkish narrative. The treaties and their selective interpretation. The Treaty of Lausanne. Here is Greece and Turkey as they have their borders today. The big question is, are the Turks right in insisting on the demilitarization of the islands in the eastern Aegean? Turkey wants to discuss it along with the other differences in the Aegean, in order to resolve them through dialogue. This position is not new, as it has been known for years that the Turkish side is constantly raising issues, in order to be included in a comprehensive negotiation from which Turkey believes that it will gain significant benefits, either territorially or legally, diplomatic or military. The Turkish demand for demilitarization of the islands of the eastern Aegean promotes Greece as a country that does not comply with international treaties, in order to damage its international image, deprive it of the support of third countries and degrade the legal or illegal nature of Turkish actions in the Aegean and the eastern Mediterranean. Nevertheless, it is worthwhile to see how this issue arose, and whether or not the Turkish allegations have a legal basis. Contrary to Turkey's clearly selfish and simplistic approach that all the islands of the eastern Aegean are and must remain demilitarized, the truth is that the status of the islands is not uniform, but governed by three different treaties, Lausanne, Montreux, and Paris, on the basis of which a distinction can be made between these islands into at least three subgroups. In this video we will speak for the Treaty of Lausanne and its selective interpretation. The first treaty that mentions restrictions on the militarization of certain islands in the eastern Aegean is the Treaty of Lausanne, July 24, 1923. Article 13 of which stipulates that in order to ensure peace, the Greek government is obliged to abide by the islands of Lesbos, Chios, Samos and Ikaria the following measures. First, Greece cannot install naval bases or permanent fortifications on the above islands. There are no restrictions on air bases or other facilities that facilitate military work, such as surveillance stations and radar. There are no demilitarization restrictions for neighboring islands, in which Greece can deploy as many forces and military installations as it wants. It is clear that the parties have agreed to the partial demilitarization of some islands in the eastern Aegean. Secondly, airspace violations and overflights in border areas are prohibited in Greece and Turkey. It is a reciprocity clause which, of course, Turkey does not invoke and does not observe, as violations of Greek airspace are a daily phenomenon, while overflights over the Greek islands are quite common. In the perception of Turkish leaders, who invoke international treaties, should not the obligations that bind their own country be observed? And if this is the interpretation they give, by what right do they ask the Greek side to comply with what they refuse to comply themselves? Thirdly, limitation of military forces. To the extent that one of the two states raises the issue of returning to the restrictions on the militarization of Lausanne, in addition to reciprocity, there should be proportionality. At the time of the agreement, strong military forces were stationed in the islands of the eastern Aegean, which could be used immediately and easily in case of renewed conflict, alongside the reorganized army in Thrace. Therefore, the islands of the eastern Aegean were considered and were one potential threat to the new Turkey. For this reason, it was considered important to give assurances that it would not be used against her. 100 years later, the current reality tends to be the opposite, as Turkey is constantly strengthening its military forces and facilities on the coasts of Asia Minor. At the same time, it repeatedly questions Greek sovereignty. Therefore, if the issue of returning to the restrictions on the militarization of the Lausanne Treaty really arose, the Greek side would have to demand a corresponding demilitarization of the opposite coast of Asia Minor. In the next video we will speak about the Montreux Convention, the Turkish request for the control regime on the Straits and the militarization of Limnos and Samothraki. Don't forget to give a like, share with your friends, click subscribe and the notification bell for more war news. Thanks for watching. See you in our next video.